Hello everyone, so welcome to the answers for the feedback challenge on explanation sentences for IELTS writing task 2. So we had a question we were looking at. The question was, it has been suggested that cars and public transport should be banned from city centres and only bicycles be allowed instead. And this was an opinion essay because it says, to what extent do you agree or disagree? So we have a topic sentence that we want to explain, and the topic sentence was, the main reason why I totally agree that cars and public transport ought to be prohibited and only bicycles should be allowed is because it reduces pollution. So the important thing when we are writing an explanation sentence is that we explain our main idea. So the main idea that we have here is prohibiting cars and public transport and only allowing bicycles reduces pollution. So this is the idea that needs to be explained. So why does it reduce pollution? So that's what we're going to be having a look at, and then we'll try and fix any vocabulary or grammar as we go along. So I've got this in a couple of slides to cover all of the comments which are in the chat. Thank you everyone who commented today. So our first answer here was, this is because using bicycles will incredibly reduce the amount of gas emissions produced by private cars and the different means of transport used by many people in a city. Okay, so this is definitely explaining the idea of how it reduces pollution. This collocation here, to incredibly reduce, is a little bit awkward. So what would be more common here is to say significantly reduce. So you can remember this collocation in the future. So this is because using bicycles will significantly reduce the amount of gas emissions produced by private cars and the different means of transport used by many people. Okay, apart from that, we have got a good explanation here, nice and simple. The rest of vocabulary and grammar was good. Moving on to our next explanation. So like this first one, I haven't actually pointed this out. This is because there's a really nice way to start an explanation sentence. That is to say, it's a nice way to start an explanation sentence. If you start with this is because, there should be no comma. And if you start with that is to say, there should be a comma. So well done to both of these students. So that is to say, using bicycles is environmentally friendly to the ecosystem. So if something is environmentally friendly, we wouldn't then say to the ecosystem because it's being very repetitive. So we're going to try and be a lot more concise. I see that a lot of students do this. They add prepositional phrases to repeat what they've just said. So don't repeat yourself. Remember, every piece of language that you use should have a purpose. If you're just repeating yourself, there is no purpose to what you're saying. So using bicycles is environmentally friendly. We're giving a reason why. So as this does not require fossil fuels. So while I understand that the student is trying to use this to talking about using bicycles, the more natural reference here would be they do not, because you'd be talking about the bicycles not requiring fossil fuels. So this would just be a little bit more natural here. So they do not require fossil fuels. Whereas if there is a large number of motor vehicles added to the road. So we weren't saying that we're going to add them to the road, they're just simply they're on the road. Whereas if there are a large number of motor vehicles on the road, this leads to an increase of carbon dioxide emitted into the atmosphere, and as a result, this exacerbates air pollution. Apart from that, clear explanation, we're definitely explaining why riding bicycles would reduce pollution. So good job here. Moving on to our next one. So in other words, another nice way to start an explanation. Again, this expression would always have a comma after it. So well done to the student. Bicycles do not cause any pollution as they do not run on fuel. Excellent. Whereas cars and other means of public transportation produce lots of smoke and pollutants because they need gasoline or diesel to work. Okay. Again, very clear explanation here. Great job to the student. Not taking risks with your vocabulary. Well done. So let's have a look at our next set of 3. Again, we're starting this with that is to say, a nice start. So unlike bicycles, cars and public transport run on fuel, good, resulting in growing levels of air. So rather than growing, because there's no comparison here, so resulting in maybe high levels would be more appropriate here. So be careful of making comparisons when there's nothing you're really comparing with. So we're not talking about anything over time. So if we're just stating fact, we just have the adjectives. So cars and public transport run on fuel, resulting in high levels of air pollution. And again, this from traffic, cars and public transport, they're already traffic. So again, we've got this prepositional phrase, which really isn't adding any information. So let's have a look at this. Unlike bicycles, cars and public transport run on fuel, resulting in high levels of air pollution, and therefore limiting the number of vehicles on roads will lessen this pollution. Good. Okay, so once again, as I mentioned before, just be careful of adding in these prepositional phrases, which are already, they're not really providing any extra information to what you're saying. On to our next one. So this is to say bicycles do not run on fuels such as petrol or diesel. Okay, so this is non-essential information. We're surrounded with comma, which contain harmful gases. Here we say to the environment, but again, this is a prepositional phrase. So if you've got harmful gases, it's fairly clear it's going to be talking about for the environment. So again, just an unnecessary prepositional phrase. So which contain harmful gases, and therefore bicycles do not pollute the environment. And while cars and public transport use oil. So while some oil, I think we're really meaning gas or gasoline here, or petrol, depending on what country you're coming from. Cars, public transport use gasoline. They release harmful substances into the air, resulting in pollution. So cars and public transport use gasoline, they release harmful substances. So here we've got a clause, and then we have a result of this clause. So if we have a result, we're going to use so to show a result. So let me start one more time. Bicycles do not pollute the environment, while cars and public transport use gasoline, so they release harmful substances into the air, resulting in pollution. Okay. So again, definitely explaining the idea. So that's really nice to see. These really long sentences that we're having, they do seem a little bit repetitive. They're okay, but a lot of this is they use gasoline, which releases harmful substances, releasing in pollution. So maybe we could make this a little bit more concise. So while cars and public use gasoline, we could just keep this, which creates pollution. Okay, so we don't need these incredibly long sentences. I hear it often from my students, but teacher, what about the word count? Stop worrying about the word count. What you need to be doing is explaining your idea. If you've clearly explained it, that is sufficient. The examiner is not sat there going, have they written enough words? What the examiner is interested in, have you developed your idea? If you're just adding words for the sake of adding words, that's not developing your idea. That's just making more words and more work for the examiner. What the examiner wants to see is development. So if you're writing something and you're thinking, oh, I'm just doing it to add words, don't do it. Make sure that every word that you use has a purpose. Okay, and that will mean you have very, very concise writing. Okay, let's move on to our next one. This is because bicycles do not use fuels such as gasoline and diesel. So again, this is non-essential information. We're surrounded by commas, which emit harmful substances like carbon dioxide, therefore reducing pollution. So again, this would be non-essential. So like carbon dioxide. Here, this would be a little bit more natural, just saying using the relative clause here, so which, therefore, reduces pollution. Okay, moving on to our last couple of sentences for the challenge. So that is the same. Bicycles are not run using fossil fuels, which release toxic gases into the atmosphere. So this is a non-defining relative clause. We need a comma before it and after it, thus reducing the level of air pollution in the air. Bicycles are not run using fossil fuels. And again, it will be just a little bit more natural here, which thus reduce. And using this relative clause to add this information, which is thus bicycles. Okay, and then moving on to our final one. This is because that's it. This collocation doesn't exist in English. So we can just say this is because, and no need for that. This is because vehicles produce carbon dioxide. We're adding information, so we've got commas around the non-defining relative clause, which is a toxic gas that's responsible of. The collocation here is responsible for, not responsible of. So you can remember this for a prepositional collocation. This is because vehicles produce carbon dioxide, which is a toxic gas that's responsible for polluting the air, and bicycles are environmentally friendly. Clear and concise. So everyone in this challenge did a really, really good job of actually explaining the main idea. So you picked the part to explain really well. There's a couple of little vocabulary and grammar issues throughout. I think the main takeaway was don't add these non-essential prepositional phrases. So if you're going to add a prepositional phrase, make sure there's a reason for it rather than it's just adding to your word count. So thank you very much to everyone who submitted their work. Remember, if you want to submit your work to these challenges, you do need to create a YouTube account. It's very, very simple. It only takes a few minutes. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe if you'd like to partake in these in the future. And good luck to everyone in their studies.